Hello, I'm Kurt Lidke, Executive Director of Klamath Film, and you just watched Bloom, a refreshing look at growing organic flowers in Southern Oregon. With us is the filmmaker, Joanne Feinberg, and the focus of the film, Joan Thorndike. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Kurt.
Yes, thank you.
Now, you released this last summer. Did you film this during COVID or just before everything changed? Because whether intended or not, this film feels like a nice change of pace during these times.
Actually, the film was a long time in the making for various reasons. And, self-funded, having other projects and jobs, and the seasons. I would say the seasons were not an obstacle, but something we had to work with. And I really wanted to make sure we captured all 4 seasons and the whole flow of Joan's work and what's happening in a life of a flower and the fields. So I don't know, Joan, if you remember how long.
At least 2 years.
At least 2,
maybe
3, maybe 4.
Yes.
We just kept filming and filming, and it was so enjoyable to be out there with Joan in the field. So I never minded that I had to keep going, but we shot a lot of footage. But I ended up editing during COVID, and specifically for that reason, when COVID hit and things shut down, I thought this is the perfect time for a film like this. People need to see what's out in the world right now, have some beauty and life in their world.
So shot over several years means you ended up with tons of footage. Now, I keep it, my own dummy rule is if I use more than 5 to 10% of the footage I shot, I'm doing something wrong. But for a film that only ended up being maybe 3 minutes in length to shoot over several years, you must have had hours upon hours of footage that you only took the absolute A+ shots to produce this then, right?
Well, we have a lot of beautiful footage, lots of great interviews with Joan and other people. Initially, I had thought about a longer film, but when it came to editing, this just felt like the perfect length. So I didn't know if she wanted to add something.
Well, I just wanted to say that it was a long time, but of course, I just kept farming. That's what I do. And then every once in a while, Joanne would show up and say, today, this week, we need to film. Well, I need to take photos. There was also photo sessions, or there were interviews, Come to my house, bring your daughter, who's my right hand on the farm. And I know when she went into actually making the film, she said, now's the time. And it was right at the onset of COVID. We've come so far since then. We've learned some survival tools, but I feel that Joanne was creating one of those survival tools, that we look at something that's beautiful, something that's tangible, something that is within reach of everyone. It's a farm. And every community, whether it's on the East Coast, the North, the South, has a farm somewhere that you can suddenly feel that the farm came into your living room, and there's solace in that.
Well, I don't think anyone realistically had the expectation that a year and a half later we'd essentially still be at the starting line. But this film definitely is a breath of fresh air in that it's so light and nice and calm in a time when we could all just be so depressed and frustrated and furious. That's something like, oh yeah, I guess there are nice things too. But also, you mentioned you shot during growing seasons. Southern Oregon growing seasons can be pretty short sometimes because we get some pretty extreme weather patterns, right? Or do you adjust for that in the course of growing? I guess it depends on what part of Southern Oregon you're in. So
that's true. We are located in southwestern Oregon, Ashland, Medford, Phoenix, Talent, that area. We have an extremely long growing season, actually getting longer every year. So we start harvesting in March, and now at the end of October, we're still harvesting. That's a long season.
Wow.
And Joanne was there for all of it. And I remember just having one piece in the film that I really wanted, and it was that transition to fall, which is the candy of every farmer. It's, yay, we're close now. And it was represented by our eucalyptus trees, which are full of birds always, and there's something very evocative about them. They survive the summer, and then in the fall they harden up, they produce their best foliage, and they're the place where I rest my heart, in those trees somehow.
Well, Jonah, not only are you so well known for growing flowers, but your farm is certified organic. So what steps need to be taken to be a certified organic flower grower?
You have to go through a lot of bureaucracy. The first year or two are difficult because you're filling out a lot of paperwork, and you also pay. You pay money, which conventional, I have a problem with that word, but in the industry, that's what you call the other kind of farming. Conventional farms don't have to pay that licensing fee. We used to be certified by Oregon Tilth, which is the first certifying agency in the U.S., and now we go through Department of Agriculture, Oregon Department of Agriculture, which is part of USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And it's a process that you really only want to go through if you're going to wholesale, because it is very onerous, and you get inspected every year, every receipt, they're looking to see that you're using things that are materials that are approved by the organic standards. So it is not easy, but if you're going to enter the wholesale market, which is really the way we survive as a farm, then you need that green stamp, the USDA stamp, and then there's no explaining to do. You enter the market and you say, I'm certified organic. You don't have to say, well, I grow this way and it's friendly to the earth, and my customers know me. You don't have to go through any of that. So in the end, it's very worthwhile. And honestly, I would never farm any other way. My children were 3 and 5 years old when I started growing flowers. It was a crazy thing to do. Nobody grew flowers. What a silly thing. And they were running around on the field, and so were employees and their children. So there was just no question. There's still no question.
Joanne, what motivated you to make a film about flowers, and how did you two get connected? Were you two all already friends, or did you seek her out, or what?
I think we knew each other. We did know each other, but not well. And Joan hosted a lovely event a number of years ago on one of the farms that was located in Ashland, where I live. And I had no idea it was there. I was just blown away by the beauty of what she was doing. She invited all of us to walk through the fields and cut flowers and make a bouquet. And this farm was just a mile from my home, and I didn't know that organic, beautiful, fresh cut flowers were being grown, right in my neighborhood. So I felt like people needed to know that this was happening around them. And as I got to know Joan and her story, I just was even more convinced that this was a great story to tell.
Great. It seemed remarkable to me. I know when you said, I want to do a film. Are you sure?
What?
Yes. But I'm so grateful, because I think it is so good for other growers, and it's good for our community, and it's just good in general to know that flowers can be grown here, and flowers they're just good for all of us,
Well,
she's been doing this, is it 30 years this year, I think. And she's so well known in the industry of fresh cut flowers. I think that's the right terminology. A legend, really, and not just because of the length of time, but how beautiful her flowers are and the way that she grows them.
I think the old part is counts a lot when you stick to something for an old time.
But
well, and
you did.
it is also a family business, and that's important too. You've grown it into becoming the largest flower growing business in the region. Ballpark, I figure on what the volume of flowers that you typically grow during the season?
Well, we grow about 150 different species of foliage and ornamental berries and flowers and bulb material and seeds and so on. And it has grown over the years as I fine-tune to serve. My guides are serving the florists, so I have to have enough volume that when they put in an order, I never say, oh, we don't have that. But I supply them with an availability list. So you have to have enough of that. And if you're wholesaling, again, you need to have enough material to go through the whole season for everybody. Mm-hmm. It's a lot. Our compost pile is really big too, because we don't hold anything over from one week to another.
I take it weddings keep you very, very busy, or is that the florist's job just to order from you?
The florists order from me, but 50% of my income is selling in bulk to do-it-yourself events. Mostly weddings. Sometimes it's wedding anniversaries. This year, shockingly, we've had 4 young people funerals, which has been extremely sobering and also taught me yet something else about the clients, my florist clients that I've done business with for 30 years, that they provide flowers for joyous events and help families through the really hard events too. And in that sense, I've been very grateful that we always invite the family, the person, the groom, the bride, whoever it is who's buying, to come to the farm and choose their own. And this year, for the first time, I'm seeing people in sadness, and it's been good for all of us. You know, it doesn't replace the person, but there's something about the language of flowers.
Mm-hmm. So I know this film showed at the Ashland Independent Film Festival. Has it been shown anywhere else? And what kind of audience reactions have you gotten from it?
It has shown at a number of festivals. It played at the Bend Film Festival. It played in McMinnville. It's playing in Fort Jones a couple of weeks from now.
Fort Townsend,
in Washington, and I'm trying to think now. And Klamath coming up. I'm trying to think if it was on the East Coast in the Rome Festival in Georgia. I don't remember offhand.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's had, and it's everything has been COVID. So COVID screenings, virtual screenings. So we haven't really had a chance to interact with a live audience, unfortunately. I was really hoping for Joan to be able to see herself on the big screen in Ashland, at the premiere, but that didn't happen this time around.
Yep.
Well, to be clear, I don't need that. What I need is for Joanne to be recognized for 4 or 5 years of material. I know, because I grew older in those 5 years. And to stick with it, I really thought for a moment, okay, well, done. Because some stories, I'm sure it happens to writers. You start writing and you write for 3 years and then you realize, no, it isn't meant to be published. And yet Joanne suddenly decided it is meant to be published. And I admire that so much. So much.
Well, we've become really good friends through this process. And that's maybe the best outcome for me of the film. But going back to the family part a little bit, I don't know if you want to talk about Isabella, because she works really closely with her daughter, who is also a floral designer and does some amazing projects. So she's a big client.
She's a huge client. This year, she's my biggest client. I don't know. She just took off in her career as a designer. And mostly she does out-of-the-box things. She's become around here. You know, what we have to remember, this is a small fishbowl. And she's a big fish in the sense that she's taken up doing installations with natural materials. And she just had the Schneider Museum of Art, which is our local museum, has enlisted her twice to do installations that have to do with materials, which for her have to be, in her philosophy, the materials have to be seasonal, have to somehow a seasonal flower, fruit, tree, whatever, speaks to us in ways that we hardly have words for because we sense it. You know, when you eat a strawberry in season, it's one thing. When you buy it in January, it's a different thing. Wow. And her pieces are ephemeral in that way, that they will disappear eventually. So she's a tremendous worker. I mean, really, really tremendous. She was 3 years old when I started farming. So, and it's in her. I see it in her hands and the way her mind works. Yeah.
What do you two hope that people take away from watching Bloom?
What do you want?
Well, it's really not in the film, but since I have a chance to say it now, is to really think about where your food and your flowers come from and how important it is to buy local and support local farming. Especially now, you know, we're facing, beside COVID and all the issues with the farm workers and people who work in the fields, there's water drought. You know, we're in one of the most severe droughts we've ever seen, I believe, in this region. The smoke, you know, and the health conditions of all the people who work on the farms, you know, to really think about supporting those people who grow our food and flowers, and how important flowers are just to our well-being. I think it's something, it's not an extravagance. It's really something necessary in our lives.
Well, thank you, Joanne, and thank you, Joan, for this film, and thank you to both of you for joining us. Bloom will be screened on Sunday, September 19th at 3:30 p.m. in our Southern Shorts category and available on demand all week. Thank you, both of you, for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thanks
invitation.
for having us.